In this video, we're going to talk about how to factor in time for amends. It seems quite niche, this amends time. Is that really a big deal? The answer is yes, because amends is a distant cousin of scope creep, and both can kill your project because it will eat into your profit margin. So it's a bit of a nightmare. I would always say when it comes to amends, we need to control the situation, and we outline that in the contract, and we explain it to the client when they sign the contract. For me, when it comes to amends, I would probably consider doing it like this, where you have revisions on a project. So let's look at, say, if you're doing a logo, you have 3 rounds of revisions. Built in with that, you're going to have your 3 rounds of revisions, and then you're going to have time for feedback. So you might say, I need feedback within 48 hours. If it goes beyond that, then there is a penalty fee to pay. Again, we don't want to charge them the fee really, but we just want to add an incentive to be swift with the feedback. If outside of those 3 rounds of amends and the feedback time, they want further revisions or further changes, explain that they will be billed hourly and they will cost a lot. So you might go, well, outside of the project, any further updates or changes to the design will be billed at an hourly basis at £350 an hour. Now, what that does is that makes them think, ooh, do I really care about it enough to incur all this extra fees? Or they'll go, no, this matters to me, I'm happy to pay it. Either way, at least you're being compensated for this additional work. But you've got to kind of be aware of the project dragging and then forcing, overlapping with the following project, which could prove to be a bit of a nightmare. So to do that, when you're quoting for the job, both in time and cost, we want to double the time allocated for both amend works and feedback. So if I put 48 hours for feedback, in my budgetary timeline, I'm going to double that. So it's actually, instead of 2 days, it's 4 days allotted for feedback time. If I'm doing 3 rounds of revisions, I might go, well, look, let's actually double the time in between revisions, or let's say they have 5 rounds of revisions. It sounds excessive, but actually, if they stick to the 3, we finish early. If they don't, I've factored in for extra revisions, which will actually become amend time. And so when it means that the project completion date, I'm not going to miss out on that. I'm going to hit that deadline, which is perfect because I've got another project starting soon after. So if I double everything, I'm basically hoping that I won't need to use it. But if I do, then that's great. And then I'd always, when it comes to like these extra buffers of time that you've built in, if the project is perfect and they go, yeah, we're all good, we've had our 3 rounds of revisions, we're happy, sign it off early, you have a choice. You can either bring that client forward, they'll often be pleased to start sooner with you, or you can set aside that time and just use it for yourself to recuperate, book a holiday, have a sleep, do some marketing. Either way, those buffers in between projects are vital for regenerating your energy and your inspiration. So I always encourage having buffers between projects anyway. But like I said, it's this thing of using that buffer effectively to invest in yourself or your business in some regard. Now, if you want to reduce amends, I would absolutely recommend like changing the language you're using with clients. So instead of saying like, oh, what do you think? And asking for like feedback and opinion, you might say, okay, are you okay to move forward with this? Or are you happy to sign that off now? What you're saying is you're forcing them to commit to a decision earlier, possibly even in the moment. And I certainly have done it where I'm presenting work to clients where I'm not leading the witness, but I'm doing this thing where I'm actively controlling the conversation. And in the conclusion, I can say, well, it's clear we've had other feedback. For me, this is the winning route. So I'd like to take that forward if that's okay with you. If you need any changes, we can talk about that. But if we're going to stay on track, it makes sense to kind of, if possible, if we're okay with that, everyone seemed to like that idea, we could sign that off today. And I'll, like I said, I'll keep moving and we'll move on to the next stage. Anything that is kind of friendly pushing them along is going to be helpful and reduce that problem. And if you want to sell in an idea so they actually sign it off sooner, remind them of their input on the idea and how it made it better. And if you're struggling with, and there's lots of amends coming back, or there's subjective amends, such as I just don't like the color, you can always go back to the strategy document and the brief to reinforce the decisions you made in creating the identity or doing the photography or designing the website, and then use that to back you up to make the point that I understand why you feel like this way, but it's actually not going to be helpful with the overall strategy. So I suggest we kind of politely ignore it, stick to the brief, stick to the timeline, and let's sign this off and move to the next milestone. And that's how I'd handle it. So it's a case of it's certain sort of client soft skills, but also factoring in with buffers for extra time and outlining it very clear in the contract, kind of what the repercussions are if you get into amends which are outside the scope of the project.